This is Tuesday, March 25th. This is American history. Well, we said on Friday's class that with Japan's invasion of Korea, Manchuria, and China, the war has begun. Now, back here in America, Franklin Roosevelt has taken a new stance when it comes to Latin America. Now, if you remember, Cousin Teddy had created the Roosevelt Corollary that said that the United States would intervene if we felt that Latin America was going down the wrong path. Franklin Roosevelt proposes the good neighbor policy, where we will intervene only if we are asked. This is Gerald Nye. He is a United States Senator from out west, and he is most distraught about the fact that he sees America entering the conflict in Europe and Asia just like we had done in the 19-teens for World War I. Nye is what we call an isolationist. An isolationist believes that our two oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific, will prevent any nation from trying to invade our borders. To this end, we have the America First Committee. Now, the America First Committee was created after people heard what Nye was saying and agreed with him. Now, the chief spokesperson for the American First Committee is this man here, Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh, of course, had flown across the Atlantic solo in the 1920s, and he was immensely popular in the United States. Lindbergh is going to advocate that we should not get involved in European affairs. Now, this was in support of the Nye Commission. The Nye Commission concludes that bankers and businessmen had pressured Wilson into World War I. Nye preferred that laws be created to prevent the United States from becoming involved in the future war that he felt was about to begin. Now, in 1937, Japan had begun its invasion of China. The Japanese are going to capture cities along the coastline, and there will be little or no resistance. Now, notice here, this is Korea, this is Manchuria up in here, and then this would be the coastline of China. Now, the Chinese really don't have an army to stop the Japanese. The Chinese have been involved in a civil war throughout most of the 1930s. In 1937, the USS Panay, a gunboat that went up and down the Yangtze River protecting American merchant ships, is going to be attacked by Japanese planes. The Panay is going to be sunk. American lives are going to be lost. The Japanese are going to acknowledge the error. They are going to apologize for the pain and suffering that they had inflicted. They agree to pay reparations to the American government to replace the Panay, and reparations to the families of loved ones who were injured or killed. Because of this, Franklin Roosevelt accepted. Polls showed that Americans favored the removal of all Americans from China. Over the course of the next 4 years, as we get closer and closer to 1940, an election year, Japanese troops are going to advance deeper and deeper into China. Now, this particular video talks about the bombing of Shanghai. Now, here is the map that you have been given. Obviously, this is Japan here. Here is Korea. Here is Manchuria. Here is China. Now, Shanghai would be right about there. You need to become familiar with this map. This is guaranteed to be on the walkout worksheet. It is guaranteed to be on the quiz. By 1940, now remember, 1940 is a presidential election year. Almost a third of China is in the hands of the Japanese. The Japanese had taken French Indochina, that would be this area right here, and Thailand, that would be this area here. Now, of course, the Japanese wish to take their ships and sail up this coastline off of Japan, but sitting right in their way is the Philippines. And of course, the Philippines are an America base. The British are concerned about the safety of Australia. Now, Japan has a Congress, a legislative branch, which they call the Diet, and the Diet is going to elect more militant leaders, leaders who would like to see a war against the British and the Americans. Now, to combat this and to forestall future aggression, the Roosevelt administration is going to begin a series of maneuvers. We will cease to sell to the Japanese fuel. We will cease to sell to the Japanese iron. We hope that this will prevent them from making war-making materials. By 1941, now this is after the 1940 election, the Japanese are going to occupy Dutch East Indies. This is what we today call Indonesia. The United States will freeze all monies that the Japanese had in American banks. So let's go back to our map. Japan, China, French Indochina, Thailand, and then the Dutch East Indies. Now remember, this island right here, this is the Philippines. This belongs to the United States. Now notice how close the Japanese are to Australia. In 1941, the Japanese will send Nomura as a special envoy to negotiate a peace between the United States and Japan. This is Nomura right here. While he is negotiating, General Tojo, who is the Minister of War, has instructed the Navy to begin an attack on the United States. Now, of course, the question to the Imperial Navy of Japan is where to attack the Americans. The most logical spot would be the Philippines. These are the islands that are closest to the shipping lanes of Japan. But the Japanese decide instead they will attack Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is several thousand miles away from Japan. The Japanese are going to have to put their faith in a new type of warfare, air warfare, planes launched off of ships and returning to ships. Now, the Japanese Navy on December 7th, 1941, will attack the United States Army and air installations of Hawaii without warning. In all, 2,300 Americans will die. Now, this explosion is believed to be the battleship Arizona exploding in Pearl Harbor. The next day, President Roosevelt will call this attack a day of infamy and declare that Congress declare war on Japan. This is Roosevelt's famous Day of Infamy speech. Okay, let's turn our attention to Germany. In 1936, Hitler is going to send troops into what is called the Rhineland. Now, after World War I, a small section of Germany is going to be taken away from Germany and given to France to rule. The French refer to it as Alsace-Lorraine. The Germans refer to it as the Rhineland. Now, Hitler alleged that the German people in the Rhineland were being abused by the French people. And Hitler is going to send in his troops to protect his people. Neither France or Great Britain protested. In 1938, Germany will call for an election to unify the two great German-speaking people, Germany and Austria. Now, the election is known as the Anschluss, and basically it is an election where you vote. Do you want to remain a free and independent country, or do you want to join Germany? Now, the election was rigged. Many Germans had come across the border the previous months and had declared that they were Austrian citizens. The SS are going to go across the border in plain clothes. And if they hear about anybody who's going to vote no, they make sure that those people don't go to the polls. So here is Germany, right here. Now, of course, this is the Rhine River. That would be the Rhineland area. This is Austria, right here. That's where the Anschluss occurred. If you're familiar with the sound of music, after the captain marries Maria, he is called back into the German Navy because of the Anschluss. And that's when he decides to climb every mountain. Many in Europe will protest this action. The Germans will use the SS as a way to police those Austrians who are opposed to German will after the Anschluss. Hitler will now turn his attention to the Sudetenland. Now, part of Austria and part of Germany will be creating the independent country of Czechoslovakia. Now, one half of Czechoslovakia, the Germans call the Sudetenland. And Hitler said that he was going to send in troops to protect German lives in the Sudetenland. Now, this is Prime Minister Chamberlain. And Chamberlain is going to come to Munich to discuss with Herr Hitler, the Italian leader Mussolini, and the French leader to what's going to happen. Now, Hitler agrees that he will ask for no other property after the Sudetenland, and Chamberlain and the French agree. Now, in politics, we call this appeasement. When you give up something small for the greater good, that is appeasement. Now, of course, everybody hoped this would be the end. Well, of course, we know it wasn't. In the summer of 1939, the Germans are going to turn their attention to Poland. Poland is another country that had been created by the Treaty of Versailles. Now, there is a small part of Poland that separates two German-speaking areas, Main Germany, and then a smaller section called Prussia. Now, remember, that's Prussia with a P. The Germans want to unify this area right here. Now, if the Poles were to give this area up, they would have no way to get to the Baltic Sea. They refused. Now, almost everybody thought that if Germany invaded Poland, the Soviet Union would become involved. But in 1939, the Soviet Union and Germany are going to sign what is called a non-aggression pact. Basically, the Germans say to the Soviets, I won't bother you if you don't bother me. We know now that for this non-aggression pact, Hitler is going to give Germany, he's going to take half, and he's going to give Stalin the other half. At the same time, Germany and Italy are going to sign what is called the Pact of Steel. And they will become known as the Axis nation. Soon, the Japanese will also sign this. On September the 1st, 1939, Germans are going to attack Poland in a coordinated attack between Army, Navy, and Air Force. This coordinated attack is called the Blitzkrieg. Now, when the Germans go into Poland, the French and the British will declare war on Germany. And September 1st, 1939 is seen as the start of World War II in Europe. This here is a video that deals with this attack on Poland. Well, here is our map of Europe. Again, this is Austria. The Sudetenland would be up here. This is Poland. Germany over here. Soviet Union over here. France. Great Britain. Italy. Now, again, all of this is going to pop up on your walkout worksheet and your quiz. So please be ready for this. Now, if you are one of my baseball players, I will make sure to grade your walkout worksheet. I'll try to do it on Tuesday night. If I don't do it, then I'll do it on Wednesday night for sure. So I hope you win a lot of games down in Florida. Hope you get a good tab. This is the end of the lesson for today.